Now it is my great pleasure to introduce our alumni keynote speaker, Marcellus Antonio McRae. Marcellus Antonio McRae is a partner in the Los Angeles office of Gibson, Dunn Crutcher, where he serves as co-chair of the firm's Global Trial Practice Group. California Lawyer magazine featured him as an honoree in its 2015 Attorney of the Year Awards. Counselor McRae has first chaired numerous jury trials, bench trials, and arbitrations in both federal and state courts. He also writes and speaks on trial and litigation skills, white-collar criminal defense, labor and employment law, and other topics. From 1995 until 1998, Counselor McRae served as Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Criminal Division, Major Fraud Section in Los Angeles. During this time, he investigated and prosecuted complex white-collar crimes, including tax, securities, bankruptcy, and other business frauds, and traditional crimes that involve both jury and non-jury trial experience, with a 100% conviction rate at trial. He also drafted numerous appellate briefs filed in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and has had several arguments before that court. Prior to joining the U.S. Attorney's Office, Counselor McRae was an associate with Debevoise Plimpton. Counselor McRae earned a BA, summa cum laude, in 1985 from the UCLA Departments of Political Science and History and received his law degree from Harvard Law School in 1988. He currently serves on UCLA's Social Science Dean's Advisory Board and the Political Science Board of Advisors. Here I am quoting from Counselor McRae. In many respects, UCLA opened and expanded my intellectual world across different historical periods, continents, languages, and cultures. It also was a launching pad for my lifetime curiosity and fascination with ideas, political theory, and philosophy. It was a seemingly endless source of knowledge that helped frame my world, my view of the world, and my place in it. And it is also where I met my wife of 31 years. So thank you so much. Let's welcome Counselor McRae.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. Let me also be in a very long line of people congratulating each and every one of you on this accomplishment. You should delight in this accomplishment. You should savor it. You should stay present in each and every moment of it because you have surely earned it. Staying in this moment will help you in situations like these when people will often besiege you with questions about what's your next act, what's your next goal, or sometimes they'll just be more blunt and they'll say, now what? And people ask that question, and it's almost like in every phase of your life, the question that's being posed to you is, what are you doing or what are you going to do? As if you have, down to the nanosecond, each moment of your life perfectly envisioned and synchronized as if you were a master timekeeper. And you might be lured into the feeling that if you somehow don't have it all figured out, that you're falling behind the pack, or that you're not on top of things, or that you're not being productive enough. And to that, I have but one word: nonsense. It's nonsense and outright nonsense for at least two reasons. First, what you're living right now, what each and every one of you is experiencing, is your journey. It's not your parents' journey. It's not your friend's journey. It's not society's journey. It's your own personal journey. Reflect on that and take serious stewardship of your journey because it is your life. The only person who can take that ride, enjoy that ride, and assess whether that ride is successful is you. It's your own metric to make that decision. And the point of your free will in this amazing education that you received is that you get to pick your own adventure. Not only in terms of what it is that you're going to do, but how you feel about what it is that you're going to do. Now, sometimes people feel with a great education, there's a burden of expectation about what you're going to do with that education. But instead of pressure, instead of anxiety, you should allow that education to create excitement about all the things that you can do to inform yourself and fuel your self-direction. So try to remember that when the question is posed to you, now what? The answer is whatever you want it to be. It might be something, it might be absolutely nothing. That moment and each moment is your moment. And this is also a time that you can think about an opportunity to pose to yourself a far more compelling and profound question than now what? And that is why? Why do you feel that you have to take this path or that path? And more importantly, underscore, is the answer something that aligns with what you personally need to feel happy and fulfilled? The second reason is whether you're a person who has every detail of their life planned out or someone who has less ambitious planning goals, we all share something in common, all of us, which is that we have uncertainty in our life. But instead of running away from uncertainty or fearing uncertainty, why not embrace it as a gift that tells us that we have the chance to treat each moment as filled with the potential to be special precisely because we don't know where it's going to take us. And while you may crave the illusion of certainty, it is actually uncertainty that injects life with excitement and wonder. In many respects, it's uncertainty that humbles all of us with the profound recognition that none of us is really in control of anything. Uncertainty is a curtain behind which there are countless scenarios, countless opportunities to invent, reinvent, go back to the drawing board, and to grow and extend yourself. And uncertainty also gives us the gift that we all want and that we all want to provide to other people, and that is opportunity. An opportunity to learn, to evolve, to grow, and to thrive in whatever sense we deem the most meaningful. And if you'll allow me, I'd like to use my own journey from the time that I left here to illustrate that point. So you heard about my background. I graduated from here. I can't believe it was 1985, but there it is. It was 1985. It's in the record book. There's nothing I can do to debate it. I then went on to law school at Harvard, entered private practice, joined the U.S. Attorney's Office as a federal prosecutor, and became a partner at the law firm that I'm at now. And some of you may be thinking, that doesn't really sound random. That sounds pretty linear. That sounds like something that you did from the time that you were kindergarten, and all you did was connect the dots and walk that line. But that's actually perhaps an appearance, but not the reality of what happened. So yeah, I had aspirations of being a lawyer from the time that I was a very small child, but I was the first person in my family to go to graduate school. And I didn't know any lawyers. I had no frame of reference. I had no blueprint. How to be a lawyer, what type of lawyer, how do you navigate your career, what are you supposed to do? I had none of these things laid out for me. But I did have something though. While I was at this school, I had a job at a publishing company, which is about as far away from what I'm doing now as you could imagine. But I stayed in contact with the owner. And one day he was talking to me, and we were catching up, and he said, I was thinking about, do you have any plans in terms of where you're going to work after you graduate? I said, well, I got a couple of places. And he goes, let me tell you something. I've never mentioned this to you before, but one of my good friends is a founding partner of a West Los Angeles law firm. I might be able to get you an interview there. And that's how I got my first job at a law firm. It wasn't as a result of on-campus interviews or connections that I made at my law school or some grand plan to network since I was in preschool. It was a job that I had as a junior in college that I could not possibly have imagined would have led to that connection. So that is an example of how the appearance of not having a clear plan or certainty doesn't mean that you're not productive, doesn't mean that you're aimless. It may mean that you are trying to figure it out and staying open to the promise and the potential that uncertainty affords. Now, years later, I was working at another law firm, and I met a criminal defense lawyer. I had never met a criminal defense lawyer up close and in person because I had gone from law school to civil practice. And this criminal defense lawyer, fascinating guy to me, because here I was at this huge national law firm, and he had a a firm with only a couple of people. And one day we started talking, and he posed a question to me that changed the trajectory of my life and my legal career. He said, "Have you ever heard of the U.S. Attorney's Office?" And, I really hadn't. Again, remember, first person in my family to go to law school, first person in my family to go to graduate school. So I probed, "Tell me about the U.S. Attorney's Office." He says, "Let me explain. You will learn about the criminal justice system at the federal level. You will learn how to try cases, and you will stand up in front of juries and represent the United States government." So I had a choice I had to make. I was comfortable where I was in a law firm, and I had to decide, do I stay there or do I embark on this uncertain path? I chose uncertainty, and it was undoubtedly one of the best decisions that I ever made in my life. I spent 3 years as a federal prosecutor. Even when I say that now, I'm beaming with pride with respect to that. Every day that I did that, I also beamed with pride in doing it. I had no, again, frame of reference or means to predict that that's where I was going to go. It was just the fortuitous event of me meeting someone who happened to have a concept of what that was and was willing to share it with me. And by going through that experience, I learned something about myself, that I was a trial lawyer. I found my place in the legal profession, in the professional world, as a result of saying yes to uncertainty. But I experienced something else, and that was an overwhelming awareness that my father had worked in the 1960s to encourage the U.S. government to fulfill its promises to all citizens, things like civil rights and equal protection under the law. And 30 years later, I was representing that same government in front of 12 strangers, where I argued that we had to live by and under the rule of law, and that none of us were above it. That generational arc was neither linear nor certain, but it was beautiful. And it left a profound impression on me. And I hope that you all find something like that that speaks to you, and that you can see that you can unpack and uncover all of these things by saying yes to uncertainty. But as they say, there's more. When I left the U.S. Attorney's Office, I needed to return to private practice. And guess who introduced me to the people that led me to the law firm that I've been at for 24 years? The same person that introduced me to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Again, not part of a master plan, completely random. He literally changed the course of my life. And I've continued to see the benefits of uncertainty in my career. One of the things that's energized me, and you've been a lawyer as long as I have, is that I am constantly having to learn new topics, new concepts, new issues, and I'm dealing with cutting-edge matters on a going basis. One example is that I had the privilege to try a case called Vergara v. State of California. This was a case in which we sought to secure equal educational opportunity for all public school children in California. When I was presented with this opportunity, I had no idea how much of a profound impact that case would make on my concept of being a lawyer and giving me an education in the power of impact litigation. As a result of my involvement in that case, I traveled across the country. I lectured on the educational achievement gap that plagues Black and brown communities and poor communities. I met with thought leaders. I engaged with education reformers. It was one of those epiphanous moments about the power of litigation, all the good, the aspirational, the normative aspects, the transformative effect that the law can have. Saying yes to that uncertainty gave me the insight that when you distill it to its essence, the law is who we are in our most noble form. It sets forth a prescription about how we ought to treat one another, something that we should obviously keep in mind. And saying yes to that uncertainty gave me yet another opportunity to be in the right place at the right time. I was traveling on the East Coast, meeting with one of the oldest civil rights organizations in the country, and we shifted to the topic of police reform, another topic critical to me. In that meeting, I started a dialogue about embarking on a project that would distill and expand the best thinking of commissioners and scholars and law enforcement personnel as a means to eliminate the excuse that you hear. We don't know where to start when it comes to police reform. The idea I had was to crystallize, along with my colleague who I was talking to, the best practices for communities and departments serious about co-policing in a way that would protect the lives of both police officers and citizens and never see those imperatives as inconsistent. And on June 1st, 2020, President Barack Obama published a blog post titled "How to Make This Moment the Turning Point for Real Change," in which he shared the link to a milestone community-based policing report and toolkit created by the Leadership Conference Education Fund. I, along with 160 lawyers from my law firm, had worked on that report with the Leadership Conference to conduct research into the best practices and recommendations to reform policing in collaboration with community advocates and law enforcement experts. President Obama described it as a starting point to an effective policing reform agenda. Obviously, that was a very proud moment for me and my colleagues, and again, just another iteration of how the law, the research, the scholarship, all of these things that sort of fuse together can be in effect to transform society. And I'll tell you something. One of the things that was a guiding light for me in thinking about police reform is things that I learned as a political science scholar here at UCLA. The interconnectivity of different aspects of society, constantly sort of thinking about philosophy as a means to affect systemic change. All of these points, I kept coming back to them over and over again, not just in that context, but in business law as well. So the takeaways that you should have here are that you should greet uncertainty with excitement, not anxiety. You should have an open and ready mind for it, not a closed mind. And you got to ask yourself, why would you want to have a life where you know how the story ends, where you move with mechanistic determination without agency to take an off-ramp, to have a detour, to recalibrate who you are and what you're doing? By staying open-minded, you may encounter milestones that are far greater than anything that you could have envisioned. And remember that your journey, once you leave here, is not a journey in a prototypical sense or a traditional sense. It doesn't have a definitive start and stop date. You never, in some sort of final sense, succeed or fail. Instead, your journey is one that is baked with perpetual destinations. Many, many opportunities to see things, to refine things, and to go in a different direction. And in case I have not made it abundantly clear that we all face uncertainty, I want to give you one other perspective. Just as you are embarking on a new career, a new path right now, there are countless people who have sat in the chairs that you're sitting in, at least figuratively, if not literally, and have then gone on and have reached the point where we're on the precipice of retirement. Those people are also beginning a new path. The point is that we all are on a constant loop of beginning and ending, beginning and ending. But I'd like to think that rather than looking at that with trepidation, that we can say that we have the right to live according to our own sense of what a fulfilling life is, and to make sure that we work as much by inspiration as we do by perspiration. And that it is not important that we do not know what our ultimate destination is, and that what is paramount, what is sacred, is that we appreciate the present moment that we're in, and that we cherish our present destination. Thank you for having me today.